prepare yourself for tales of the creepy, the terrible, and the awful things that hide in the night. Welcome to these dark spaces. The Child Above. There in the depths of the darkness, beneath the creaking floorboards and hidden from prying eyes, is where I wait. I am a creature born of nightmares, razor-sharp teeth filling a too large mouth, claws like daggers able to rend a man in two with one swipe, and eyes that glow with an otherworldly hue. I am the one that lurks silently in the inky blackness, just out of sight, biding my time. I have gone by many names over the ages, but the most recent one they've given me is only uttered in hushed voices in private spaces. Gravenmaw. The name itself has no power, despite those that I hunt saying it does. The young ones have even made up a game around it. They say that if you stare out into the darkest part of the woods, just beyond the edge of town, and call out my name, beckoning me to come, that I will emerge from the shadows and be at their command. Of course, I do nothing of the sort, but that doesn't stop me from having a little fun. A sharp snap of a branch here, a low, almost imperceptible growl there, and they're running back to their homes in panic. That is, until it was time for my never-ending hunger to be satisfied. It starts as a dull ache deep inside of me, but quickly turns to a white-hot flame, and I can think of nothing else. So I hunt. I move silently through the town in the late hours of the night, when the shadows are at their deepest, with only the faintest whisper of my steps. Even after all these years, I still have to be careful. I've honed my skills to an expert level, but there are always surprises, especially when the children are involved. But tonight, my hunger burns brighter and stronger than it has in years, threatening to consume me if I don't satisfy it soon. Some homes still have lights glowing in their windows, so I avoid them. Too risky. I'm not completely immortal, after all. There, at the top of the hill, the little dilapidated white house with the red door and the remains of an abandoned garden in the front, once maintained by a father that has since left. Not by my hand, by his own choice, claiming that he couldn't take it anymore and that she was smothering him. I was there in the shadows that night for that argument, listening to them scream at each other while their two children mercifully slept peacefully upstairs. I was there that night for the wife, though. I'd spotted her earlier from the safety of the woods, and my inner hunger sparked to life. All day I imagined how delicious she would be, stoking the red-hot flames inside of me even more, spittle dripping from my mouth. But those plans were stopped short when the argument began and the downstairs lights came on. So I moved on. But now I can hunt in peace. A full year has passed since that day, and the memories of that hunger for her rushed back in full force. I left the safety of the woods, silently crossing the distance to the rear of the house in 2 easy steps. The night was cool, and they had several of the windows open on the lower story, so entry was not a problem. I moved just as silently through the home, taking special care to avoid leaving any trace, and moved towards the main bedroom door there behind the weathered stairs. Inside, I could hear her heavy breathing, deep in slumber, with no idea that her life would be cut short that night. Crawling along the floor, I inched to the side of the bed where she lay, the hunger now consuming every part of my mind. The smell of her was intoxicating, and I breathed deep, savoring it. But then something moved beside her. There in the bed was one of the small ones, the ones that had been blissfully unaware that night I'd visited before. I paused. No, not 2, only 1. That was the way it had always been, and would remain. I could feel the fire inside of me dimming, realizing that my hunger would have to be filled elsewhere tonight. I stepped back into the shadows that fell along the wall there by the bed, cloaking myself in at least a small amount of protection should either of them wake. I studied the small one. Her skin was pale, much paler than her mother's, and her long jet black hair lay in a tangled mess around her head on the pillow. Her face was gaunt, but judging by her shape, it was not from malnutrition. The top of her nightgown peeked out from under the blanket, just enough to show a monogrammed name. Emily. I felt drawn to her for some reason. There I stood, staring, searching for a reason for the fascination. It wasn't the hunger. It was something else. Then she stirred and rubbed one eye with a small, balled fist. My mind snapped back into place, and I realized that I needed to leave before... Before what? Was I afraid? I moved back through the house towards the open window I had entered through to escape swiftly, with a bit less grace than before. Rounding a corner, I jostled a small bookshelf, spilling a few books from its overcrowded shelves. I paused only a moment, oddly curious what they might read. A few were the expected children's books, but one thin tome caught my eye because of its worn red leather cover, an embossed symbol inlaid with gold. A face not too different from my own, mouth wide, teeth bared, flanked on either side by folded wings. An odd sensation swept over me, a feeling of familiarity with something. A thump from the direction of the bedroom prompted haste, and in one smooth motion I leapt through the window, escaping back out into the night to resume my hunt, only for a less desirable meal. Several years passed, and despite many falling victim to my needs, I still could not get that woman, her child, and that book out of my mind. The memory of that night was a constant tug at the back of my mind, taunting me. And so the decision was made for me. Tonight, I would finally quench that desire. I would have her and revel in the delight of a long-awaited meal. I leapt from the woods, just as silent as always, and slipped through the same window, thankful for another cool night. I retraced the same path as before, moving through the kitchen, then the living room, and across the hall at the bottom of those same worn stairs. So close now. I caught the faintest whiff of her scent on the breeze, Then the stairs creaked, and I looked up to see the small one, now grown into a young woman, standing at the top and staring down at me, emotionless. In her hand, she clutched that red book tightly, the gold emblem on the cover glinting in the feeble light filtering in from the bright moon outside. She wore a tattered nightgown that seemed to float around her like a specter. The silence was almost palpable, my gaze locked into hers. Then she took one step down, her soft bare feet making only the slightest of noises. As she continued down the stairs, I felt frozen to the spot. It was only as she grew closer that I could hear her whispering. I couldn't quite make it out, but I could tell it wasn't her native tongue. A few steps more and she opened the book to a page marked by a long red ribbon and began a low chant, accented by surprisingly loud thumps against the book's cover from her small fingers. I was finally able to wrench my gaze away from her and took the chance to escape. But her chanting grew louder, and the thumping of her fingers gave way to heavy pounding as she took each step down those stairs. I felt woozy. My head started to swim and my vision was blurring. Her chanting was now filling every part of my mind. I could feel myself starting to slip away. I fell to the floor mere feet away from where she would soon arrive at the bottom of the stairs. After what seemed like an eternity, my head lolled to the side and I saw her bare feet there next to me. Her nightgown rustled as she leaned over and whispered almost melodically into my ear.
"Hello, Gravenmore. You cannot hide from me."
And with that, the blackness overtook me. I awoke with a start, discovering I was no longer at the bottom of the stairs. I looked around in panic, trying to gain my wits, and this new place I suddenly found myself in. There was wood above me and wood below me, rotten and damp in some places, clearly on the eventual road to disintegration. To the sides of me, however, was only open space. I dug my clawed fingers into the wood and worked my way sideways, the wood barrier above me restricting me to not much more movement than that. I neared the edge, so close to freedom. I gave one last push, but instead of freeing myself, I hit hard into something. I tried again, making sure that I was completely clear of the wood barrier above me. I slammed into the same place, stopping dead before tasting freedom. Trapped. With a loud click of the knob, Emily pushed open the door and stepped into the room, a soft, ominous giggle, upon observing me once again trying to free myself. The dim light from the hallway behind her cast eerie too long shadows on the wall. She knelt again and we locked eyes. I froze. She smiled. There was something in her gaze, a deep, ancient knowledge that no child should possess. She opened the book once again, laying it flat on the floor and smoothing out the tattered brown pages. She read aloud,
"I am the harbinger of your nightmares."
And though Emily whispered, her voice still somehow echoed through the room.
"You may be terrifying to others, but you are nothing compared to the horrors I have seen since my birth. This will forever be your prison. Your hunting has come to an end, and you will forever know hunger, but never be able to feed. You've only been given one gift, one release, to frighten. Yours is now the world below, and while you can move from place to place in that world, choosing to use your one gift or not, you will never be allowed to roam free again."
I threw myself against the invisible barrier again and again, but Emily never even so much as flinched.
Now,
She said quietly and calmly.
if you'll excuse me, I need to fix the bed.
She closed the book and stood. I could still see her feet as rustling came from overhead. The room fell silent again, and she turned and retreated from the room, leaving me trembling in fear, trapped in this prison. I, the monster that had once reveled in the terror of humans, had met my match in a child. A child who held a darkness within her that was far more terrifying than anything I could ever imagine. Emily was a reminder of the vast unknown horrors that lurked in the world, and that I was no longer the true embodiment of fear. In the darkest corners of my black, monstrous heart, I began to come to grips with the fact that I would forever be trapped, tormented by the mere thought of the terrifying child who lived above on this simple prison, the darkness beneath a child's bed. Thank you for listening to These Dark Spaces. We hope you enjoyed this story. You can find out more about us at thesedarkspaces.com or follow us on Twitter at thesedarkspaces. If you've enjoyed listening, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite listening platform. Until we meet again, stay vigilant, keep your senses sharp, and your mind open.